all know that the Packers have a very well-run organization, especially with Brian Gutekunst as the general manager in Green Bay. Sometimes we just don't know how good we've got it until the Packers move on from a player, whether it be via trade or just cutting ties with a player. Then he joins another team and he's not as successful when he gets to that team. And the Packers, I feel, dodged a bullet when they cut ties with Preston Smith. Of course, we all know that they traded him midseason, replenishing the 7th-round draft pick that we gave up to get quarterback Malik Willis. Really great signing by Brian Gutekunst to get Malik Willis for a 7th-round draft pick. And now they can talk about a return on investment. You can go and give up Malik Willis and get a much better draft capital than a 7th-round draft pick. Well, the Packers get that back when they gave up Preston Smith, and Preston Smith is already cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers. It says right here that he's going to be turning 33 in November. He produced only 2 sacks, 8 pressures, and a forced fumble over 8 regular season games, and that was over 161 defensive snaps when he was traded to the Steelers. He was a healthy scratch during 2 of the team's final 3 games, included the Steelers' playoff loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Man, when you take a step back, and I know that during the time when Brian Gutekunst traded away Preston Smith, I know there were some fans out there that didn't agree with the move from the Packers moving on, especially with the inefficiencies we had as the pass rush aspect of Jeff Havley's defense. But opposite Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith just wasn't getting it done, and his snap count went dramatically down. The Packers, of course, gave way to more playing time for Brenton Cox Jr., who I thought was better than what we saw out of Preston Smith this season. Aaron Mosby looked pretty good. Kingsley Enagbare looked super solid, and remains to be seen about Lucas Van Ness and whether or not he's going to be trade bait for Brian Gutekunst this offseason. Time will tell whether or not they try to trade him or not. But it says right here, Smith was due to make $12 million as a base salary in 2025, and then $13.4 million cap hit to the books, and then $14.1 million in 2026. So the Packers, not only did they move on from a player that's becoming inefficient on the football field, but they're also able to save a bunch of money in doing so. No offense to Preston Smith. He gave the Packers a lot of really good football when he joined the Packers in 2019. He had 44 total sacks, 42 tackles for loss, 96 quarterback hits while in Green Bay. And he also appeared in 7 postseason games, producing 4.5 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. He was brilliant for the Packers when the Packers had him. However, Brian Gutekunst just knows when to move on from players at the right time. Speaking of which, the big offseason potential will be Jaire Alexander, and it was reported in this article that the Packers are expected to cut ties with All-Pro this offseason. Jaire Alexander, of course, team's frustrations. What does that mean? Well, Rob Domofsky, who is a reporter for the Packers, ESPN, said that there are strong indications that the Packers will move on from All-Pro cornerback Jaire Alexander this offseason. While money plays a factor, those working with the team have reportedly been frustrated with Alexander's lack of availability. It says right here in quotations that multiple team sources have privately expressed their frustration with Jaire Alexander's inability to stay healthy and or play through injuries. Of course, that's been a huge problem for the Green Bay Packers. He hasn't played against the Lions since 2020. And when you play in such a strong division and you've got rivals against the Lions and you've got Minnesota Vikings and he hasn't been playing those games, that's huge to be without your number one corner out there. Well, what does it mean for the Packers to cut him? Well, it says there are some financial incentives for Alexander to be a cap casualty. If Alexander if he is cut post June 1st, the Packers would free up 17.117 in cap savings. Even if the Packers release him prior to June 1st, which I don't see happening, they would still save about, I've read articles about $5 to $6 million in cap savings there. And it fluctuates by give or take $1 million there. But that being said, the Packers could also trade him. So it depends on what they decide to do with Jaire Alexander. But one good thing that we can take from this is that Brian Gutekunst certainly knows what he's doing. Obviously, by cutting him, the Packers are going to free up some space there to sign a corner like DJ Reed from the Jets or Chavarius Ward. In my opinion, I would much rather have Byron Murphy out of Minnesota. This dude is an absolute stud of a corner. Certainly would take over that number one role and fill Jaire Alexander's vacant shoes there in Green Bay. He had 53 solo tackles, one forced fumble, six interceptions. This dude is an absolute stud. But one thing that we can glean from this is that Brian Gutekunst, I feel, is going to make the best decision for the entire organization with what he decides to do from Jaire Alexander. But we've got indications that this dude knows when to cut ties with players at the right time. Leave your comments. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, go Pack Go.